career, and life ready. The mission statement is our schools are a place where children belong. Each student is known by name, strength, and need, and provided the education and opportunities to achieve success. Our values are striving for equity, inclusion, and belonging, celebrating diversity, engaging the community, supporting the whole child, and promoting and achieving academic excellence.
All right, thank you, Director Rasmussen. Next is the student and staff recognition, and we'll have Ms. Bowen tell us about High Five Fridays.
Good evening, everyone. Robbie, are we able to bring up our lovely photos? So earlier this month, we celebrated our first High Five Friday in the district. This is something that one of our neighboring districts does, and we adopted. It's just a fun new way to recognize our staff in a fun and informal way, and to get people started off on the weekend on the right foot. So instead of recognizing staff groups at board meetings, every Friday we are randomly drawing 2 or 3 staff to receive a free coffee drink, a high five, and talk about something they love about their job. Give them a little recognition, a little love, and send them on to a happy weekend. So we'll run through the schools. Everybody will get a turn to have a chance at having their name drawn, and then we'll surprise them with a coffee drink. The cabinet and I will be hand delivering those and spreading some cheer. Any questions? Every Friday, yeah. So instead of just once a month at a board meeting and having different groups having to come to the board meeting and be recognized, we realize that's not everyone's cup of tea. So this is a much funner and informal way to recognize them kind of on their own terms. Okay, thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Ms. Bowen. All right, next we'll hear our student representative reports. Tonight we'll start with Dallas High School, and we'll hear from Skylar Coburn.
Hi, I'm Skylar Coburn. I'm a senior at the Dallas High School and the executive vice president of ASV. I'm also involved in other activities such as swimming, track, and band. Friday is 8th grade fly-up day. 8th graders will visit 5 elective classes at the high school. High schoolers will be dismissed for half of a day. During this, the 8th graders will get to learn what it is like to take a class at the high school and look at different electives. The high school is hiring a new school of work coordinator that will focus on providing students with authentic work-based learning experiences starting next week. Some examples of opportunities students will have are internships and shadowing opportunities. Extracurriculars are doing very well at the high school right now. Robotics competed in Vegas at the Battle for Vegas competition. They placed really well and did awesome. The THS theater department will be putting on Freaky Friday the musical, and they're working very hard and will have performance dates in March. This winter sports season at the high school has been an extremely successful one. Competing at the state level, the cheerleaders took third in a tough division. The swim team finished their season with multiple top finishes at state by Lydia DeGennaro, Michael Cole, and a 4th place relay finish by Skylar Coburn, Michael Cole, Carter Randall, and Everest Leonardson. Overall, the boys took 8th as a team, and the girls took 10th. Boys basketball has had a great season with an overall record of 10-12, and will be heading to a playing game in Pendleton on Monday now. The girls basketball team has also had an awesome season with a 10-10 overall record and is heading to a playing game in Junction City on Saturday. The Riverhawks ski team had an outstanding performance at their last league meet, with the boys taking 2nd, qualifying for state as a team, and other top 10 finishes by Lucy Booth, Gray Rochesender, Cooper Clint, and Ella Smith. And finally, wrestling had a great showing at their district meet in Pendleton last weekend. We are very proud of the Riverhawks students for getting involved in something and performing well. It makes the high school experience a lot better and represents their high quality. Thank you for your time.
You, Skylar. Next, we'll hear from Innovations Academy, and we'll hear from Carrie Clausen.
Evening. It's good to see all of you, or some of you again. We're this month, and since the last meeting, Innovations hasn't been doing a lot. Our leadership class is working on an impaired driving campaign, and we are planning that out. And we're hoping to have a day event. I'm not going to give much away because we're still working on it, but we're hoping to get our entire school community involved in it within our students and our staff. We also have new staff coming. We have a school counselor now, and we have a new science teacher as Mr. Trimble has left. And we have new students coming as well. Some of them have left and then come back, but we have new students coming almost every single day or at least once a week. That includes our online students. So bringing our student body account to 187, which from the last time I checked is roughly 20 more students than we had last time. Our end of the term is coming up next month on the March 9th. And so we have teachers and students kind of wrapping up the rest of the end of the term and trying to get stuff in and making sure it's going to go smoothly. We had our art class that Ms. Cardiel teaches do an art project for Locksburg. They asked us to paint a tree for their graduating students. And they have one student who has graduated recently. And so his handprint is the first one up there. And then we also have our allowing students to now go outside during lunch, which is something that doesn't sound big, but it really is for us, as it's a step into being able to give our students a little more freedom than what we've been able to with such a small staff. And thank you.
Carrie, next, excuse me, we'll hear from the Dallas Middle School and Olivia Anderson and Samuel Kramer.
Good evening, District 21 School Board. My name is Olivia Anderson, and I am an ASB class representative from the Dallas Middle School.
My name is Sam Kramer, and I am the ASB secretary for the Dallas Middle School.
We have had quite the busy and fun February here at TVMS. One of our biggest highlights for students was the Valentine's Dance. It took place on February 10th from 5:30 to 7:30. ASB all joined together to create a balloon arch, which ended up looking great. We were also very close to selling out of all food items with an attendance of 351 students. Overall, the dance went well and our students enjoyed it.
This month, we sold and delivered almost 500 friendship grams. Students could choose to send a rubber duck, a chocolate rose, or a box of conversation hearts to a friend or staff member. The proceeds helped pay for some of our dance expenses, like the balloon arch and the DJ. Gotta love paying bills.
TDMS is proud to say that our athletes are showing the real Wildcat side. Our girls basketball team had their latest game yesterday against Henkel. The 8th grade team lost by 8 points, and the 7th grade teams won 39-34. The wrestling team had their most recent tournament last Wednesday against Pendleton in Boardman and won close to all of their matches. Go Wildcats!
Flag Day is coming. Go Riverhawks.
Wait, I thought we were Wildcats.
Well, I guess I better break it to her. Olivia, there comes a time in a Wildcat's life where it's time to go to high school. Flag Day is a special event for 8th graders to go and try 5 20-minute classes at the high school. This will take place tomorrow afternoon.
Gotcha. I wonder if we can convince Mr. Leducer to let them stay a little longer.
Well, it was worth a try. I suppose our pep assembly on Monday just wouldn't be the same without it.
Speaking of the pep assembly on Monday, we're going to have lots of fun competitions. We will have a life-size Hungry Hippos, a sticky card pickup, and a beach ball bounce. The cheerleaders are planning a performance, and we will have breakthrough banners for our winter athletes. We were also planning to hold another Spirit Week just before spring break, March 13th through 17th. The days will be Monday, Pajama Day, Tuesday, Croc Day, Wednesday, 80s Day, Thursday, Mustache Day, and Friday, St. Patty's Day.
Looking ahead, our ASB team is working on an April talent show and a May family night. More details to come soon.
We are very excited for all the fun activities planned for the future. We appreciate your time.
You, Olivia and Sam. Next, we'll hear from Chenoweth Elementary School. We have Alexis Figueroa and Mercedes Sanchez.
Good evening. I am Alexis Figueroa and I'm still a fifth grader student at Chenoweth Elementary. Buenas noches de nuevo. Soy Alexis Figueroa y todavía soy estudiante de quinto grado en la escuela primaria de Chenoweth. In fifth grade, we're learning about the water cycle. Can you name all the parts of the water cycle? Evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and transpiration. En quinto grado estamos aprendiendo sobre el ciclo de la agua. ¿Puedes nombrar las partes del ciclo de la agua? Evaporación, condensación, precipitación y transporte. Our fifth grade ASB planned a school dance on February 16th before the 4-day weekend. We danced to music, ate pizza, and played games during the end of the school day. Nuestro ASB de quinto grado planeó un baile escolar el 16 de febrero, antes del fin de semana de 4 días. Bailamos al ritmo de la música, comimos pizza y jugamos al final del día del escolar. The kindergarten students celebrated the 100th day of school yesterday. They did all kinds of activities related to the number 100, and some of them even dressed up as 100-year-old people. Los estudiantes de kindergarten celebraron el día 100 de clases ayer. Hicieron todo tipo de actividades relacionadas con el número 100, y algunos incluso se disfrazaron de personas de 100 años. We are so excited that our basketball hoops were finally added to the playground. Mr. Stevens sometimes plays with us at recess. Thanks, Mr. Stevens. We invite the rest of you to stop by our playground anytime. You can shoot hoops and have fun. Estamos emocionados que finalmente se agregaron los aros de la baloncesto, el patio de recreo. El señor Stevens a veces viene a jugar con nosotros en el recreo. Gracias, señor Stevens. Invitamos a ustedes a pasar por nuestra escuela cuando pueden y para jugar al baloncesto y divertirte. And as we always say at Chenoweth, remember to be kind, be responsible, be respectful, and be safe. And don't forget, together we're better. Y como decimos en Chenoweth, recuerda ser amable, responsable, respetuoso y seguro. Y no olvides, juntos somos mejores. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alexis. Next, we'll hear Dry Hollow Elementary. We'll have Elias Jensen and Lydia Leducer.
Good evening, board members. Thanks for allowing us to speak with you tonight about what's been happening at Dry Hollow lately.
It has been a busy January and February at Dry Hollow. As you may or may not know, so many things are happening. First, we'd like to thank Dr. Richardson, who I must say has a very pleasant voice, for recording the Dry Hollow news. You did a great job, Dr. Richardson. Thank you for taking part and also attending one of our assemblies.
The assembly Dr. Richardson attended was our Word of the Month assembly. This month, we have been working on showing more empathy for others. We have learned that empathy is seeing with the eyes of another, listening with the ears of another, and feeling with the heart of another. Pretty cool, right? Huh?
The Student Council recently wrapped up a very successful fundraiser for the American Heart Association. They set a goal of making $500 for the Heart Association by selling hearts paper hearts, not real ones. Altogether, they made $544. Dry Hollow students, staff, and parents are very generous. Thank you.
Besides the assembly for the word of the month, we also gathered in the gym for an assembly from the American Heart Association. It was called the Kids Heart Challenge. We learned about a kid named Finn who was born with multiple heart defects and spent the first 8 months of his life in the hospital. He has had 18 heart surgeries so far.
The Dry Hollow Library has baby pictures on display of the Dry Hollow staffs. It's not for a contest, but just a chance for students to guess who the babies are. Mr. Kaiser doesn't think it's fair though, since when he was a baby, they pretty much only took black and white pictures, and almost all the pictures are in color. So it's easy to figure out which picture is his.
Dry Hollow Elementary School and Chenoweth Elementary School will be hosting a regional OBOB tournament. OBOB stands for Oregon Battle of the Books, not off by one bug, as some might think. The tournament is in March. I'm sure if anyone on the board is interested in helping with this, that Miss Stewart could use your help.
Some of the Dry Hollow staff members will be getting a pie in their countenance tomorrow. This is what the students chose to do after collecting 1,500 pride points. We want you to notice that we use the word countenance instead of face because we think it sounds a lot nicer than pie in the face or in their kisser, if you know what I mean. We strive to be classy at Dry Hollow. It should be a lot of fun to watch.
Soon we'll be celebrating Read Across America. Lots of fun activities are being planned by our Wonder Woman without the Wonder Woman costume, Mrs. Corey.
Speaking of wonderful things happening at Dry Hollow, we were talking about that, weren't we? The Dallas Masons Club has for many years been donating 2 brand new bikes for each trimester to 3rd through 5th graders who meet their AR goal. We'd like to give a shout out to the Dallas Mason for all they do to promote reading in our school district. Thank you, Masons.
We are excited to see that some of our Dry Hollow students have their recipes picked for the Future Chef competition coming up next month. We want to give a shout out to our amazing head cook, Barb Hawkins, who many at our school think is better than Chef Gordon Ramsay, for being a big supporter of this competition.
That just about wraps up our report. As you can tell, we have no surreptitious activities happening at Dry Hollow in the last month. My logorrhea can be off-putting to those who have spent a lot of time listening to this report. So we'll just wrap this puppy up.
Again, thank you for inviting us to speak about all the terrific things happening at our school. We at Dry Hollow like to say that District 21 rocks our socks, so to speak. That's all, folks.
Thank you, Elias and Lydia, for keeping it classy. All right, our last report will be from Colonel Wright Elementary, and we'll hear from Eva Harris.
I'm Eva Harris, and I am here to represent Student Council at Colonel Wright Elementary School. I'd like to talk about what's happening at Colonel Wright. We started up a Student Council for our school just this month. At Colonel Wright, we have already had some clubs like robotics and a visit from a jazz band and a few other assemblies. In Student Council, we are working on starting an art and a sport club. Student Council has been working on some issues like fights and vandalism. We might have an assembly to talk about these issues or train Student Council members to work with other students that need more positive support. We are looking forward to more field trips and assemblies at Colonel Wright. It would be an honor to have some of you come and visit us. Thank you for your time and effort.
Thank you, Eva. That concludes our student reports. Next, we'll move into our consent agenda. Tonight we have the school board meeting minutes from our previous meeting. And then we also have the licensed employees contract extension, renewal and non-renewal. And then we also have an updated personnel report. Any comments or discussion from the board on any of those three items? Director Nelson?
Under integrated guidance plan update, the last sentence, it reads, Dr. Merklin reviewed that the budgeting process still being worked on by ODE. I'm just wondering, does that word reviewed actually have this context in this? Would you review that the budgeting process is being worked on, or is that more like mentioned it or said it or revealed it? I don't know. I'm just saying it struck me that it isn't saying what it should say.
So what's your recommendation on the wording there?
Well, I gave three choices: revealed, mentioned, or said.
Yeah, would reported work, John?
Yeah, reported is fine.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we can make that edit. Thank you for pointing that out. Any other comment or mention? The one, I did have one on the contract extension renewals. I just wanted to confirm Mr. Brost is listed as vice principal. Okay, that was okay. District athletic director. Okay. Instead of vice principal. Yeah. Any other comments or questions on any of the three items? If not, I will entertain a motion for adoption.
I make a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented and corrected.
With the edit, okay. All right, so I've got a motion by Director Rasmussen, seconded by Director Jones to approve the consent agenda. We've got the one word adjustment on the meeting minutes, and then the change in title from Mr. Brost on the contract renewal from vice principal to district athletic director. Any further comment or discussion? No, we'll move to a vote. What, I missed what that was. Yeah, Jones, second. Okay, nothing further, then move to vote. Starting with Director Lopez. Aye. Director Rasmussen.
Aye.
Director Jones.
Aye.
Director Nelson.
Aye.
Director Richardson. Chair votes aye as well. Right, next, just a review of our board action calendar. No real changes. February, March. Any questions or comments? Just what we have upcoming in our calendar? Seeing none, we'll continue forward. That brings us to our school board subcommittee reports. We will start off with Director Stevens not in attendance tonight. We'll start off with the Wellness Committee, Director Richardson.
I do not have a report from the Wellness Committee tonight.
All right, Equity Committee, Director Rasmussen.
I actually was not able to attend, but thanks to HR Director Harris, she let me know that they are in the process, the committee's in the process of committee building. We have member representation from all schools. We're working on community agreements, and then also going to be doing some kind of assessing of barriers to make sure things are more equitable.
Thank you. Next, we have the Wasco County Forest Collaborative, Director Nelson.
Yes, we had a meeting this month, and I distributed my notes to all the board members and superintendent and secretary. So that's all.
Thank you, Director Nelson. Next, we'll hear OSBA Legislative Policy Committee, Director Richardson.
Thank you, Chair Aparicio. So the pace of bills at the legislature continues to be very fast during this session. Our OSBA representatives are testifying on behalf of bills concerning us almost every day. The main topics of discussion this past week have been workforce investments, special education and abbreviated days, and early literacy investment structures. Budget advocacy has been picking up this week after the release of the quarterly revenue forecast yesterday, and there's good news there. Economists informed lawmakers to tentatively plan to have $696 million more than anticipated earlier as they had identified spending priorities for the as they work to identify spending priorities for the two-year budget that will begin in July for the biennium. The state now expects to have roughly $31.5 billion to spend between the general fund and lottery resources in the 2023 to 25 biennium. And this sets the baseline for all the discussions about funding moving forward. So that could be good news for us if we're successful lobbying for schools. Very briefly, there are three bills I want. School boards. There's a draft bill that LC 3924. It's a school board member protection bill. It has two parts. It would prohibit county clerks from distributing home and work address information of board members in response to public records requests. And it would create the crime of harassment or intimidation of school board members. So that's being considered now. House Bill 2753 would allow district school boards directors monthly stipend. And Senate Bill 1031 requires elections for directors of school district boards to be held each year. There's a lot of discussion that this won't get much traction this year, but it may in future years. It would direct district school boards to develop a plan to ensure that the majority of members are not elected at any one regular district election. And it allows district school boards to decrease the number of board members from 7 members to 5 members. So the OSBA has their eyes, especially on these bills, and I'll give updates if they make any movement. Thank you.
I thank you, Director Richardson. Last report is a D21 Ed Foundation, Director Jones.
Nothing to report.
That concludes our school board subcommittee reports. We'll move on to staff reports, and we'll hear from the D21 Education Association representative, as well as a North Wasco Education Support Professional representative. I'm not seeing that. All right. So they are not in attendance. We will not hear from them tonight. So that'll move us into new business, starting with presentations and reports. And tonight we will have the first of our school building reports. It'll be the Dallas High School. And then as the months progress here, we'll hear from the other buildings as well. But we have Mr. Evans tonight to tell us about TDHS.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I'm going to focus tonight on CTE and Perkins 5 and just a few things around that. The CTE, Career Technical Education, we talk a lot about it. There's some uniqueness to it. And the biggest piece of it, what separates it out from a regular elective class at the high school or any high school, is that it specifically and intentionally follows an industry standard. So music, weight training, from a student's lens, are all just as equally important as a CTE class, but that is specifically what separates a CTE class out. And often we will be in a situation where maybe the industry is shifted or changed. And so at the school level, we will do things within the curriculum and the program to do that as well. An example of that, I've talked a little bit about our construction program. That has historically been a woods program, kind of wood shop. Still very important skill, but really the industry is traditional construction. And so that's why we've made that shift. So that's the biggest piece of it with CTE that kind of sets it apart. The second thing is a lot of times with a lot of our programs, we have clubs that are associated with that. You've heard many times of the world domination of our robotics team. And that, of course, is part of our computer science program. That's a club that's attached to that CTE program. We have a lot of the clubs in general at a high school level. Often they're driven, they can be driven by staff, but often they're driven by students, and they're student initiated. And we have a process for students if they want to start a club. And sometimes they're attached to a CTE program, sometimes they're not. But most recently this year, students began meeting as a esports, which is competitive gaming basically. And they, and I, to be honest, I didn't even know this was happening. They were meeting downtown at a store, computer store downtown, and it sort of grew to about 24 kids. And they reached out to one of our teachers, Leah Ferguson, said, "Hey, will you sponsor us? We want to start a club." So she said, sure. She didn't really know what she's getting into. And so now this is kind of morphed into like an actual competitive high school club that we're going to sponsor and support. And so we're looking at different spaces now at the high school where we can put that specific club. So anyway, kind of a long story, but that's, again, that is just, you know, the program itself, the CTE program too, they tend to spawn these things, that these clubs and these activities that go beyond just the classroom. Okay. The other big piece to CTE is Perkins 5. Perkins 5 is an act, a federal act. The name of the act is called the Strengthening Career and Technical Education for the 21st Century Act. Okay, that's, nobody uses that, one calls it that, it's just simply called Perkins, or in this case, Perkins 5. So if you hear that term thrown around, that's what that means. And it's, of course, an evolution to Perkins 4, which was passed back in 2006. Perkins 5 was passed in 2008. The federal dollars attached to that are $1.2 billion. It's, you know, federal law, so it's very, part of what ODE is charged with is deciphering that federal law down and making it digestible for us here at the local level. So this, I didn't do slideshows or print offs, but ODE's actually done a pretty good job creating Perkins 5 handbooks. If you have a hard time falling asleep at night, want some light reading, feel free to dive into one of these things. But there is actually really good guidance in this, especially for me. And what the Perkins money, what that goes to is, we of course receive that money. It's High Desert ESD that distributes that money to us. And what that money goes to is purchases. It can go to professional development, but it also goes to purchasing expensive pieces of equipment. And a lot of the programs that we have require that in order to follow that industry standard. We have some very expensive, very nice tire changing machines, for example, in the automotive, those types of things. And so those are the types of things that we purchase with our Perkins dollars that come to the school. Okay. The other piece to Perkins 5 that has changed is the emphasis on what's called work-based learning. And again, this is a document, I joke about it, but in all seriousness, this is actually a really good document with guidance around work-based learning. And there's been an emphasis to expand it in the schools. And basically the best way to describe work-based learning is like, here's your classroom where the kids are learning, and here's the job site. So how do we bridge this gap? The teachers have a day job, and the industry out there, they may not know that there's a need for, say, a job shadow or an internship or something like that. So as Skylar said in his report, we're hiring, and we have the position already, we're just kind of changing the duties, a new person to do school to work coordinator. And that person will really kind of focus on bridging the gap, and it will require a lot of community outreach and community engagement. We have a lot of industry partners that exist already, but to do it well, you really have to have someone out there sort of, knocking on doors and saying, hey, can you support a student in either just a job shadow or a full-blown internship? So that's what we're trying to strengthen this year and then going into next year. And then is a component of Perkins 5. It's a big emphasis on it. The numbers in CTE, just if you want to know what they are, about 88% of our students each year, that's what it was last year, 88% of our students take a CTE class. So that's half a credit or more. So it's a big chunk of the school that do that. In fact, in 2021, that graduating class, 175 of those kids, which is basically the entire class, had taken a CTE class. So almost every kid at some point will be exposed to it throughout high school. Money is distributed on what's called concentrators and CTE concentrators, and about 28% of our students will earn 2 credits or more in a specific CTE class. That's what the numbers were last year. I guess my philosophy on it, it's great when we have students that go through 2 or 3 years of it, but I look at it, it's still high school, and part of really what we're doing is, yes, they can get an industry certification and go right into a line of work, but really for me, it's a lot about exploring for students, and they may get into something and realize that they have no interest in it at all, and then switch, and then find something that interests them more. So that's what I feel our purpose is, more so than pumping out a bunch of certifications. If that happens, that's great. That happens every year. We'll have welders and people that go straight into industry. But really, in the broader sense, the bigger picture, I'm much more interested in just giving kids an exposure to these very real career fields. We're still, like I've been saying this forever, but we're still trying to add a 7th program, health occupations. But it's just, we're having such a hard time finding a person from the healthcare field that wants to come in and teach. And it's just, right now we're trying to do, it's an athletic trainer is what the job is posted as, and with the hopes that that person can do half and half, be athletic trainer in the afternoon and then teach in the morning. So if we get a person that will be able to do that, that would be a 7th program that we'll start. We're always trying to focus, we do focus on if there's disproportionalities. For the most part, across the board, it's fairly even in subgroups. The disproportionality are at the school, we tend to have a low percentage of students with IEPs that participate in our CTE programs. We're always trying to, it's really an individualized help with that. We can't just have a broad brush fix to that. All schools struggle with that because of the need for a learning center for those kids. We have a little bit of a gender discrepancy in CTE. A little more boys will take it than girls, but we have the opposite happening in some of our AP classes. So we just always have those pieces there. We're always trying to work on them on an individual basis and encourage those groups that maybe are underrepresented to take those classes. Oh, sorry, one more thing. As a couple of people mentioned before me, we're doing the fly up day for 8th graders. First time we've ever done that. It's going to be the beta version tomorrow. Well, I think it's going to be great, even if it doesn't go perfect, but every 8th grader's got a schedule, and that is not just CTE courses. We opened up that to all electives, but really the emphasis of that is going to be so they can explore. And like I said, it just goes without saying, these courses are just in huge demand. Even for fly up day, they're packed. I had to reduce some of the numbers in some of those classes for students. So that's, I guess, all I'll say. I don't have a big PowerPoint. Hope you're okay with that. But that's in a nutshell what CTE is, kind of behind it, and kind of where we're headed and the direction that we're headed in it. Thank you.
Any questions, comments for Mr. Evans? Well, I just had one. The 88% in terms of the kiddos that are taking the CTE, how's that, I guess, from like a historical perspective? Are that fairly typical, or are we trending upwards or downwards, or how's that number look in comparison if you look back a number of years?
Well, we've had 6 right about the year that I became the principal, we had, we went from 3 programs to 6 programs. So I know that that has been pretty much the case since then. I haven't, to be honest, I haven't looked back that far. But we're at a capacity though. At any given moment, about half of our students are enrolled in a CTE class, about 50, anywhere from 50 to 60. We just simply can't have any more because, you know, we can't have, I think 480 is like literally the max. If every class was 100% full, that would be the maximum that any student could take at any given time. But again, by the end of high school, we're practically 100% that have taken something in one of those 6 classes. So, yeah.
Other comments, questions for Mr. Evans? All right. Thank you. All right, our next report is our superintendent's report, and Dr. Renal will give us an update on the 2027 strategic plan.
Good evening, board members. Our team and I are here to give you a strategic plan update, kind of mid-year in our year 1 priorities of our 2027 strategic plan. So we thought it was an appropriate time to bring you an update of the progress that we're making so far. So as you know, we have 5 areas that we're focusing on. And the first page is the priorities that we identified for that area. And then the second page is the progress that we've made so far. So the first area of focus is our student experience. And we had 5 priorities that we were working on and our progress so far. Actually, today I had the pleasure of spending the entire day with 6 of our high school students, 4 from the Dallas High School and 2 from Innovations Academy. And we had a really great day building leadership capacity in our students and also increasing student voice in advocating for issues that are important to them. Last week, we had a full week of restorative practices training. And it's really just our first step in incorporating a trauma-informed lens when we look at student behavior and academic success. We've been doing a lot of stakeholder survey work to inform our integrated guidance plan, which we need to bring forward in March to all of you, which is the first step of submitting it to the ODE for approval. And then our district equity committee is growing, as Director Rasmussen said. They're working to grow that. We now have representation from all of our schools, which is great. And we're looking to continue to grow that. And our focus really is on eliminating barriers for students and families in order that they can achieve success in our schools. Dr. Merklin and Amy Hampton, our student services director and teaching, learning and assessment director, couldn't be here tonight. They are attending a conference. Our second big bucket is on teaching and learning. And in that we had about 7 focus areas that were 7 priorities that we're working on. And our progress so far, as I mentioned last week, we did a week of learning around restorative practices. We are working, principals are working with their teachers on PLCs, which are our professional learning communities. We have formed our first K-12 curriculum leadership team for language arts and math, and we have representation from all 6 of our schools, and they are exploring the ever-changing standards, developing a curriculum rationale, prioritizing and unpacking standards, and creating high-level curriculum maps. We want to be able to use all of that information as we incorporate various student data to inform our curriculum tools and implementation. We're also developing a description and a process for a professional development committee that will help inform the professional development that we deliver to our staff, as we want to make sure that the professional development that we're providing them is both meaningful and useful for them. We've begun to analyze and align our reading interventions district-wide. We're trying to ensure equity of access and instruction across the district. We've facilitated some training on some specialized reading interventions, and we are working to develop a D21 MTSS framework, which is multiple tiered systems of support. We also have launched into Oregon Data Suite that will become the hub of all of our data. And this will help us in analyzing previously collected information on learning and engagement as part of our integrated guidance application. And as already mentioned, tomorrow is Fly Up Day. It's been mentioned several times now, but we're really excited. I plan to drop in and see how it's going. I'm excited to see our 8th graders in their first time at the high school. And we're also working to develop a consistent structure for transition to kindergarten.
All right, I'll try to power through this without letting my teeth chatter, guys. So in the world of our community engagement, a few of our priorities underway. One of the things that we've been doing ongoing, even before we finalized the strategic plan, was our involvement in the community. We've been active in a number of chamber events, including the recent gala where both the student and the educator of the year were from D21. So that was exciting. We continue to engage in their Wired and their business after hours events as they come up. And we've also been trying to participate as a D21 team in a few nonprofit or fundraisers and other events. I survived the turkey trot recently. We're also trying to engage more community partners in coming into our schools. We've been doing that in a number of ways. Tamara and our nutrition services is going to be hosting a food competition here coming up next month, and we have a community partner that's going to be serving as a guest judge, so that's an opportunity there. And then we just finished our final 5th bond planning community group meeting. So that was a really great exercise in community engagement. We started out with probably about 65 individuals that did dwindle down to about 40, 45 folks by the end. That was about a year-long process. But it was a great opportunity for the community to come together as a whole for our district. And it also sparked a couple of other community initiatives, one being a facilities work group that I believe you guys have heard about already. And then potentially some more things coming on in the next coming months, such as open houses at our high school and other community events. As far as including cultural groups in our school ceremonies, this is ongoing as well. We have been continuing our work with our local ESD on engaging our migrant families in school activities. We recently held our first focus group that was hosted in Spanish for Spanish-speaking families to give input on our integrated guidance reporting, which we'll hear much more about next month. It's riveting. We also have our DLI program does advance 1 year each year. So we are into 2nd grade now. And we were also able to hire a bilingual liaison, a second one for the district. It wasn't a new position, but it was one that had been vacant. And we were able to get somebody on board. And I think that's a really key, vital role to engaging those populations. I'm going to skip over the equity committee work since Dr. Bernal already mentioned that, and I believe Sandy may have some additional comments in the future. But as far as increased district communications and media relations, this was one of my personal objectives when I first started my role, which started about simultaneously with the strategic planning process. I did go back and just for my own curiosity, count the number of times we had stories or highlights in the media, and it came out to 51 in the last year. And so I'm pretty happy with that. I have a really good working relationship with our local media and sharing our story and looking to do some fun things where we have a highlight coming out soon about our Safe Routes to School coordinator who's new and Fly Up Day and some other fun things like a student roundtable. I wanted to highlight one thing that's not up there. Oh, it is emergency trainings and drills. So this is another way we engage our community and specifically our emergency responders. So this is the first year since pre-COVID, I believe, that we are going to be conducting expanded lockdown drills. So we've been having a number of meetings with our local law enforcement and other emergency responders to get ready for those. And we're also going to be reaching out to the local tribal police and liaisons to see if they would like to participate in those as well. Last but not least, accessibility of our board financial reporting. We have made a new location for these that are a little bit easier for folks to find. They aren't buried in our board meetings and agendas. They're actually in a page of their own under the business office page. And then I did want to expand on the website as well. We've done some additional accessibility features. We are in the process, or excuse me, I am in the process of finishing up a winter weather information page, as well as a crisis and emergency planning page for our families. And then the near future, I'm going to be revamping our parent resources and curriculum page.
Good evening, board. Thank you. I'm here to talk about the staffing and some things that we are working on this year thus far. First of all, we are researching information from several Oregon school districts about the pros and cons of implementing hiring pools so that we can get the best educators for our students. Our equity team, it is growing. We have representation from 5 of our schools, a community members, teachers, ESP, and a board member. So we're working on getting the students from both high schools to work with us as well. On the Grow Your Own pipeline, through tuition reimbursement, we're supporting several of our staff members. We have 4 students actually that we're partnering with OSU and CGCC for candidates that are teaching with us, working towards their bachelor and also a teaching license. We have 7 staff members on an emergency or restricted license that we're supporting with tuition reimbursement, and 2 ESP staff who are going back to school and getting their teaching license. 4 teachers are working on an administrative license, which we are also supporting through tuition reimbursement. There are other staff members I know who are working on their licensing and paying for it in other ways, but we do go out to our schools and we encourage the staff to further their education into either administration or our ESPs into teaching. I am collaborating with the Regional Educator Network, the REN, and we have just put out a survey in our area alone. 17 interested ESPs would like to start on the teaching license within 6 months. So we're super excited to welcome them in. We're looking to create a cohort with one of the colleges, so create a sense of belonging and a cohort of staff that can work together to finish their teaching license. We are seeking staff support and they're gaining a sense of belonging in our district. We have peer mentors. So we have 12 peer mentors. Our ESD mentor is mentoring about 22 staff members. We also have a new administrator mentor that's working with our new administrators in the district. And those are 1st and 2nd year teachers that are getting mentorship. We also have, with our partner with OSU and CGCC, we have mentors that are working with those students as well. And we're getting new staff involved in our PLCs and also in our curriculum teams, so they can give that sense of ownership and that sense of belonging into our school district. So.
So I'll speak right in. Facilities, we do have several goals that we're hoping to achieve and will achieve, and they'll kind of come in a methodical order. Some of them have to come before the others. So the first one is to create the facilities work group. We do have applications out there for community members and the public to apply to be part of the work group. We will get the word out for that, and that's available. And I'm certainly going to encourage our bond planning group to apply and be engaged, because they've learned a lot about what capacity and what challenges we have in our facilities, but certainly encourage input from all sorts of members. And we also want to make sure we include city and county members, but I'm skipping ahead. We'd like to have those meetings quarterly, and it's going to be a lengthy process to get through each building, but we'll start at one and move down the list. One of the keys that is going to help us with the work group is the redesign of our Sodexo position that recently became vacant. We are filling it. This gentleman starts March 13th, and what we're going to do with that position, instead of doing the managing and operations of the day-to-day facilities staff and custodial. We will have that person focusing on building, planning, and strategic management of what I'd like to eventually have is each building has a list of here's all the things we want fixed, here's the priority of it, here's what we estimate it's going to cost, and start working strategically to get that get moving down the list on getting some of those repairs done, assuming we can figure out fiscal resources. So that's always going to be a challenge. The facilities project page is on the website. It's in process, but we also want to get the work group set up and start getting some momentum under that. The bond communications has been out there. Stephanie's done a fabulous job of having all the information, each one of the resources that we talked about at all the meetings, and a recap is available on the website. We did complete a walkthrough with police and sheriff's department and campus safety audits. We have a list of things that we'd like to do. And some of the things are like rekeying a whole building. And we'd like to start looking at the feasibility of card readers instead. So we're working on the process of getting bids and figuring out what that would look like and what it would cost. It's a pretty hefty undertaking, but it would certainly save the key issue, having keys floating around with staff. So not that there's an issue as long as we recollect them. So security cameras have been a huge project in the last year and a half. We've installed, I can't tell you how many, it's probably easily over 100 cameras, still have more to install, and that will still require more electrical wiring. And it's also a capacity issue with our vendor. The cameras aren't always available and in stock. Same issue. Sorry, I didn't mean to yell at you all. Then we want to create welcoming environments, which will definitely be a good key issue with both the facilities work group and the principals as we get into the new budget cycle and start working on next school year. And the long-term plan to improve athletic facilities is going to go hand in hand with the facilities work group and then redesigning of that Sodexo position and working with athletic director and the coaches. And that is a quick update.
Any questions? All right, I did have a couple. Under teaching and learning, I'm just curious, the professional development committee, is that going to be just like a building? Is that going to mimic, I guess, the PLC groups, or are we looking at like a district level that'll encompass folks from each building?
Yeah, we're working on the design of it right now and working with some of our stakeholders about like what the membership would look like. But ideally, yes, we would have representation from each school, along with some members from the district office, and we would work collaboratively together. And the person from each school would serve as a representative for their school in bringing voice to what are the needs of their school professionally.
Okay. Then see, under facilities, I know we've done, like you mentioned, a lot of the security camera updates, and I got to imagine that that's largely been focused probably on our like actual buildings where we have kiddos. I'm just curious, is part of that plan also inclusive of properties like, say, like Quentin Ballpark, Thompson Track, or those probably aren't on the list, but I mean, I think it would make sense at some point since they are still district properties.
Yes, that is a good point. We have them on the list. They're down there, but let me bring that forward with our IT department and make sure they have that on their scope later, because we probably would need additional wiring in some of those locations for sure. But yeah, that's a good point. And we do have some at Chenoweth Middle School, even though it has very low use, but
right.
Yeah, not the fields yet. So okay. Yeah, good point.
So
I can tell you our cameras are really good. They're highly sensitive. Over the last 2 nights with the snow flurries, I've had over 115 notifications, alerts on my phone that there's movement. Yeah, my phone just kept going buzz, 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 buzz. So they're working.
Right. Any other questions, comments? All right. Thank you. Okay. Anything else, Dr. Bernal? If not, I'll move to the next report. Okay. So our next report comes from our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Kara Flath.
So in the financial summary for this month, I'll just highlight a few things. I'm sure everybody read it in depth and knows it inside and out, but one of the things the district was approved for some additional student investment account monies for an intensive program. What that will consist of is they call it it's kind of a workforce group that is going to meet and have recommendations and discussions. So you'll certainly hear more information on that. And just want to give you a heads up. That's about $2 million over 4 years, but it's actually a little more because it's $700,000 in the first year. And what they're actually doing is running it in a calendar year, which is odd, but January 1st to December 30th, we have 700. I know it's weird. And with that, we're currently recruiting for a grants manager with all the state and federal grants we have, plus this program. It's becoming quite intensive because Oregon likes their reports. So we want to make sure we give ODE everything they need. And so we have that position currently recruited. If you know anybody, please encourage them to apply. So that is currently out there. The legislative front, I know a little bit that was discussed. It does seem like the governor's priority includes summer learning. It doesn't address whether or not school districts get summer learning. It does talk about community-based organizations, which we have been doing summer programs with. Last year, we expanded it to include some music and definitely after-school programs with Discovery Center and some of the other areas. So we hope to continue that, but it's highly going to depend on what that fund looks like. I do want to remind you all, I'm just keeping this in there, the statement of economic interest. Hopefully all of you as board members, that's new reporting for you. You will have to fill out, it's like a conflict of interest with your position. And if you have any financial possible gains from being in your position, you do have to submit that. And it's March or April, but if you have not received an email with a login, please let me know. You want to make sure that you hit that deadline because they will fine you if you don't. So just want to make sure I stress that.
And to add to that, I will email it out to you guys, but there are trainings that they go over how we actually complete that in their system. If you haven't already set up your login and stuff, like I've done my account, but then I got the message, I think earlier this week, and they had a training, I believe Wednesday, just going over like how we need to do it. And I think there's another one coming up. They have a few more. So I'll send that link out and it has the dates for any of just their basic webinars that just go through the process to complete the forms that we need to have. So.
And when the report does come open, it's not difficult to do. Dr. Bernal and I have done it since we've been here, but if you do have challenges or don't have the login, I'm your main contact. So please do get a hold of me. And yep, board chair is correct. There is lots of training out there if you don't have it. So just keeping that on the radar. You'll probably hear me say that next month too. So just keeping that. Giving a quick update, the other areas, the athletics corners, what I'll call it. The Crow's Nest was taken down by Sid Whitefield. That was done as a voluntary project with very qualified people, just noting. They did come in and they were all volunteers and put a crane up and took the Crow's Nest down. As you know, that was becoming a high risk and very wobbly if you ever walked in it. So wanted to make sure we eliminate that. We are working strategically to try and figure out some community donors and fundraising efforts to see if we can get that replaced before the football season, but it's going to be quite challenging. But there was no way to salvage that and keep it up there, so it wasn't usable last season, if you remember that. So keep that note. Principal Evans with the district athletic director did get the school football team moved to the Tri-Valley Conference, which saves a lot of bus miles and a lot of time for coaches and staff and students. So it's great news and we appreciate both of them for that. Facilities always has a lot of work they're doing. The Amaton field, we are working actively because the water with the natural springs is backflowing and trying to figure out what the challenge is with that. It is in natural springs. So we have an engineer currently looking at it to see what it is how we actually can fix it. It does have some equipment already on it. We're not sure if the equipment's failing or if there's another issue. And there's a lot of technical details on that. So people smarter than I am are coming in, looking at it so we can do the right thing and fix that. Every year we do have a pipe break on the Sid White field by Watonka, and it is an asbestos covered pipe. So we have to pay someone to come in. We are going to have that whole line replaced this year because it's continuing to deteriorate. We spend more year to year since I've been here every summer break. So it's just a new spot. So we're going to have, I think Devco Mechanical is the lowest bid. So they're coming in to fix that if they haven't already. Told you about the Sedexa position. The gentleman is starting March 13th. That's good news. And yep, just reminding you that we moved the management of staff under district staff, which is Dan Mazel, and he's doing a fabulous job. Nutrition, you already heard the Future Chef program is coming. Had 25 recipes submitted, and then we are nailing it down to 6 and have a competition coming up. So very excited. We also do have the food truck purchased. We will have right now the Dalles High School graphics department has done some proposed truck logos to go around, and that will be put out to the student body and the nutrition staff to vote for their favorite. Once we have that, we'll hopefully have that wrapped and in play. My goal is to have it at the March meeting, and hopefully you folks want to come a little early and see the new food truck and have a little meal out of it. Transportation staff is very busy, and as you know, we took over Sherman County's transportation. We do bill them for services. It's working quite well. Our transportation director does a stellar job. But when I asked her for an update, she gave a lot of details and miles because she's working hard and she's pretty proud of what all they accomplished, and they do a fabulous job. That's kind of it for the financial report. I do include, technology status just as information. And if you have any questions, let me know. But okay, let me get to the real numbers. So, and still, we're working through all the grants and finalizing all the information. At the end of the day, we are projected to have 2.7 million left in the bank, so to say. We will be moving things around and making sure that our general fund balance, we're trying to continue to get that. So we'll maximize all the grants that we have and make sure that we keep our general fund balance as healthy as possible, especially considering we're not entirely sure what the state fund's going to come back like. They have early numbers for next year, and it looks very similar to this year. So that's the good news, is it's close to this year, and we hope to maintain. Any questions? That was really quick, but.
By close, are they, with the state school fund, are they also then bridging the deficit that they relied on the federal monies? Maybe that's more of a legislative question, but I'm just, I know they acknowledge it, but then they're kept relying on the federal monies as why they reduced the state school fund. But are they, I guess, increasing it to the point where then that deficit isn't there? Or
no, at this point, that number would not account for supplementing with what districts do with federal money. And I think currently the governor's budget's at 9.9 and 10.3 is what the goal would be to get it to that point. So it's not there yet. So we'll see how hopefully that continues to grow. Okay, I'll move into enrollment. We did dip down again a little in February, and it does seem like we continue on this pattern, and it'll continue to go up a little bit, but it didn't really increase from last month. The interesting note is that from the beginning of the year, we were at 2,851. Now we're at 2,754. That is a drop of 97. So I'm hoping we see that come back. Still, it's still above what we ended last year. Well, not close to the peak, but so it'll be interesting to see how that continues to grow at the end of the year. And we don't know what kindergarten until registration comes up, what that's going to look like. Again, it always seems like the numbers based on birth rates is higher. So we'll see how that continues to grow. And as we go through looking at enrollment, we're going to have to start planning for next year on which classes have bubbles and moving teachers around to account for those changes. And that's just a kind of a note or comment. And I did not provide a bond planning update. It's the same as it was. You'll probably have more information, but the group had their final meeting and was still wrapping up what their final recommendations are, and will have information to you. I think the plan is to do that in March. So I didn't have any new updates on that, but all the information is out on the website. Looks really good if you haven't been out there. Any questions?
Any other comment, questions from Ms. Flath? All right, thank you. All right, let's see. Mr. Corey is not here tonight, so we do not have a board attorney report. So we'll go on to discussion and action items. First up is the 2023-2024 ESD local service plan, and we'll hear from Superintendent Sublette.
Yeah, we have a tech department and I'm not it. So it's very nice to be here again this year. And each year I come to you with the local service plan for your approval. And each year I at least mentally promise that next year I'll have slides. So this year I've actually got them. It's only taken me 6 years, but we've got slides. So thank you, Robbie, for helping me with those. So the first thing, I just wanted to give you a brief overview of us as an ESD, because I think 5 years ago we had about 30 employees and our budget was just north of 6 million. So we've grown a lot, and we've grown a lot through adding quite a few grants and contracts to our offerings to districts. And you can see now we're right just slightly above 70 staff, and our funding comes from a lot of different sources. When we hire people in the fiscal team to come from school districts, it's kind of terrifying for them. We do have somebody who's dedicated to grants and contracts because we need that. So switch. So you can see it's kind of hard to see, but we get the local service plan makes up just slightly less than 40% of our budget. And that other 60% then comes from grants and contracts. So that's really where we've been able to expand, is in that 60%. And so what are the services that you guys are getting from our local service plan? And if you go ahead. So one of the large services is the technology department. And the tech team I think they're quite amazing, actually. We've got several people who are working together, and they are providing all of the tech services for North Wasco. They're also providing tech services across the region, but they tend to be more kind of way behind the wall tech services. So things like connectivity, things like that for other districts, as well as for North Wasco. This year we added E-rate services, not so much our tech team, but we have some other folks who we're providing E-rate services to 10 districts throughout the state of Oregon. But we do kind of do the district side of things for E-rate for North Wasco County School District. So that's why I got that up there. So you guys aren't contracting with us, but we are supporting that. And one year we lost our tech director a few years ago. And so I was the tech director, which was not a great year. I'll just say that. You could see by the little snafu I just had. But I will say I learned a little bit about E-rate, and it's fascinating. And it's all about having contracts with large corporations that bring connectivity into the area, and in various ways, or
it was really enlightening for me. And my hat goes off to anybody who does that work. So, but so all of those cameras that you were talking about, our tech team has been helping to install those cameras. They've been really they're remarkable. Every time I'm like, okay, make sure you're not working more than 40 hours a week. They kind of look at me sideways and like, right? So we also provide early intervention, early childhood special education evaluations using local service dollars and school psych services. We do provide early childhood special education for Wasco County, and those are grant funds that come in, but because that's a large service that happens mainly for North Wasco County School District, I wanted to mention that here. Right now, I think we've got right around 100 children who are in that program, ages 0 through 5, or yeah, 0 to 5. So, and a whole team of people, not school psychologists, sorry, speech and language pathologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists are doing those evaluations and providing that therapy for kids. Education and innovation is another thing. So mentoring for teachers as well as administrators, we've been providing that. Homeschool registration, Native American support, and anything of the funds that are allocated that we're not spending in services, those go back to the district in flow through dollars. We try to keep those flow through dollars right around 80,000 coming back to the district. That's always my goal. And just as Kara was saying, we always spend grant dollars first if we possibly can to save districts district funding. So some of the statewide grants and initiatives you've heard tonight about integrated guidance, we're providing technical assistance. So we have staff who've gotten specialized training through the Department of Education, and they're working with the district to walk them through that integrated guidance planning. It's very in-depth, and so walking side by side around that planning. Next year, we'll be providing special education technical assistance. We know from the Department of Ed that they want us to provide that for districts. We don't know exactly what they want us to be teaching, but we know that they want us to hire some staff or a staff person, at least part-time, to offer that support to districts. And there seems to be a trend in special education, as you've seen in some of the bills that are in front of the legislature right now, toward kind of a closer eye on how special ed is being delivered and reporting how IEPs are being written. A lot of training areas, I think, that the Department of Ed is looking into for that position would be supporting districts in that way. Then we also just hired a 0.8 person to add to our 0.2 person who's doing, it always sounds awkward to talk about 0.2 of a person, but they're to provide student safety and prevention services. So this is specifically around student mental health and suicide prevention. The state just freed up dollars, so each ESD is able to hire one person or one FTE for that position. In the past, we had a half-time person who was providing support for a 5-county area. So you can imagine that doesn't result in a lot of you don't see as much from that amount of support, but I'm very hopeful with our new person hired you'll see a lot more from those positions. And then emergency operations planning support. We're very fortunate to hire Claire Rannett, who has been working closely with law enforcement during the
BSAT teams. And so we used to call them threat assessment teams, but now they're teams that are going to be supportive of students who might be posing a threat or making some sort of a statement that really needs to be looked into, and for people to assess, is there really a danger there? Or if there is, how can we get support for that student? So some of our other large initiatives are migrant education. You've heard about migrant families. So on our migrant family nights that we're hosting up at the ESD at the college, we have 60 parents that are coming to those. They've had to move them to a larger room because, I mean, that's a lot of families. And so we have excellent parent engagement with migrant families. We're also supporting houselessness, the 21st Century After School program that will be writing that grant again soon. And then early intervention, you've heard me talk about that. We're running 2 preschool promise classrooms. So probably, I don't know, 4 years ago, Candy Armstrong came to me and said, would you write preschool promise grants and run some preschool classrooms for us? And early learning is near and dear to my heart. And so the first preschool promise classroom that we started was Sunshine Kids Bilingue. And so that's that's the preschool that's at Chenoweth Elementary School, and is serving, I think we're full in that program. And so that's 18 preschool children who are going to preschool in Spanish mainly, like I would say 99.99% in Spanish. And then we're starting a second preschool out at Petersburg, and that will be we're hoping for a multilingual classroom. We would love to emphasize Sahaptin as well as Spanish and English in that setting. And then we have our Sunshine Kids preschool classrooms that really have a lot of emphasis on young children with special needs, but also we're running what's called the LEAP program. And our goal is for all of our preschools to be LEAP classrooms. And so those are highly, highly inclusive classrooms. And our staff have had a lot of training and a lot of support to, they're really fun classrooms to observe, because you'll see somebody maybe having what they like to call big emotions. And so a kid might flop down on the floor because they're about to start screaming. And it's not the teacher that goes up to that child, it might be a peer. It's like, hey, come on, let's go. And kids respond to that much better than if an adult comes up. And so it's been wonderful to see how that's developed over time, and will continue to develop. And then we have our hubs. We have you've heard it tonight about the Columbia Regional Educator Network, and some of the work that is happening with that group, the Four Rivers Early Learning and Parenting Hub. And so there's parenting education that's happening both in Wasco and Hood River counties across the 5-county region, actually. And that goes through the Four Rivers Early Learning Hub. And then the STEM Hub. Do you know how many pallets of Legos we've had come into our offices? They come in, they repackage them, and off they go. I don't get a single Lego kit. It's really wonderful to see all of the wonderful things that are happening through the STEM Hub, both in their support of robotics programs across the region, and getting materials into classrooms. And I'm very proud that we get to support our districts with those programs. That's it in a nutshell. And I'm sorry it did go on a bit longer this year because of the slides, I think, but I could go on. I mean, each of those programs, you can imagine, could be a much larger presentation. Any questions? Yes.
Just one brief question. Where can we look to find out more information about some of the initiatives? Specifically, I'm interested in learning more about the houselessness work that the SD is working on.
Um, contact me. Okay. Yeah, that would be great.
The one question I had is for the 100 kiddos in the 0 to 5 group, is that just, I guess, kiddos that eventually go to North Wasco, or does that encompass all of the district that the ESD services?
That encompasses all of the districts in Wasco County.
Okay.
So the vast majority of them do go to North Wasco, but also South Wasco and Duper.
In different, okay. No, I was just trying to compare and contrast that versus kind of what our kindergarten numbers are and how many of those kiddos have the
Right.
opportunity to
Right,
have that early learning ahead of them entering kindergarten.
right. And we try to, the state's attitude for a 3-year-old child is that the best place for a 3-year-old to be is in a preschool or in a childcare setting. And for 0 to 3, we serve children in their home, or we try to. And then if they're not at home, we're trying to get them into a group environment if at all possible. And frankly, that's what has led us to start offering preschools and expanding that work, that footprint.
In terms of Lagos, I met a foreign exchange student that goes to the high school from Slovenia. And I said, how's high school? And he says, it's okay. He says, well, what's your passion? When you go to school, what do you want to do the most? He says, I really love the robotics team and I love the after school club. So I know that was like, that's what drives his interest to go to school. So
Well, and my understanding is that robotics team is intense.
yeah,
So that's exciting.
it's competitive this year.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And they spend a lot of time there. So that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Further, thank you. We do have an action item regarding this local service plan that we just heard from Superintendent Sublet. So I do need a motion for approval of the plan and the services that the ESD will be providing for the 23-24 school year.
I can make a motion to approve the 23-24 ESD local service plan as presented.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, so I've got a motion by Director Rasmussen, seconded by Director Nelson for approval of the 2023-2024 ESD local service plan as presented by Superintendent Sublet. Any further question, comment, or discussion on that? Not, we'll move to a vote. Director Lopez. Director Rasmussen.
Aye.
Director Jones.
Aye.
Director Nelson.
Aye.
Director Richardson.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Okay, our next discussion action item is the approval of the surplusing of the vocational education property. And so we hear from Ms. Flath.
Hello. Last month, we put in a request to purchase some vocational education supplies equipment. This is similar to the same program we discussed. We have a 0.1 piece of property on Heritage Loop, 0.1 acres, I should say. And looking at, it used to, apparently historically, it used to have a teacher who helped do some construction projects on that property. Since then, that teacher was a high motivator behind that. We don't have that capacity right now. So we would like to sell that property, and that money would be used for the vocational education program at the Dalles High School. So we'd like to surplus it and get it on the market and see what happens.
And where is that property?
It's on Heritage Loop. Does that mean anything?
No, I don't know where that. Where is that in the city?
Mr. Evans is smarter than I am in this one. He can tell you.
It's on the west side of town. So if you head down 10th Street and going west towards the district office, you've got like Pomona Meadow retirement community on your right. So just past that is well, there's some apartments, but down in there, and there's a new subdivision. So Mark McAllister had the program a few years ago and built on another lot, built a house with the students, sold the house. This goes all the way back to like 2008. And so sold that house. So there was another lot that was purchased at some point in that process with the intention of building a house on that lot. So that's the lot we can't. It's really difficult to have students, take them across town, hammer away on a house for 45 minutes and then come back. So the teacher ends up building the house. So anyway, it's in theory a great idea, but in practicality it's difficult.
I actually remember where that is. That's division.
Yeah. So like Floral Court and Richmond Court off of 7th Street. They kind of go there. But it's a new subdevelopment right there. Some newer houses.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, any further questions regarding? If not, I will take a motion for approval of the request.
I will make a motion to approve the surplus of the vocational education property.
I do have a second. All right, so I've got a motion by Director Rasmussen, seconded by Director Lopez to surplus the Heritage Loop property that consists of a 0.1 acre lot. Any further question or comment regarding that? If not, then we'll move to a vote. Director Lopez. Aye. Director Rasmussen. Director Jones.
Aye.
Director Nelson.
Aye.
Director Richardson. Chair votes aye as well. Our next action item is the approval of resident release and non-residence acceptance slot request for the 2023-2024 school year. And we'll hear from Dr. Bernal on this one.
Thank you. Each year we are required by March 1st to determine district transfers to and from our district. Our recommendation is that we grant up to 30 non-resident students to attend our schools, as well as allow 30 resident students to be released to attend another school district in Oregon for the 23-24 school year.
Bernal, any questions or comments regarding that? And then the one thing I'll say is 30 is kind of what we did for this active school year. So the number is the same. Any other further comments, questions? If not, I will entertain a motion and just note that we'll do it in a singular motion, but we need to just define the non-resident and then also the resident.
So I'll make a motion. So I move to grant consent for up to 30 non-resident students to attend school in North Wasco County School District starting the 23-24 school year, and move to grant consent for up to 30 resident students to be released to attend another school district in Oregon starting in 23-24 school year, with the understanding that all consent is subject to district policy and administrative rule.
All right, do I have a second on that? All right, so we've got a motion by Director Nelson to grant consent for up to 30 non-resident students to attend school in the North Wasco County School District starting the 23-24 school year, and also granting consent for up to 30 resident students to be released to attend another school district in Oregon starting the 23-24 school year, with the understanding that all consent is subject to district policy and administrative rule. And that was seconded by Director Jones. Any further comment or question on that? Seeing none, then we'll move to a vote. Director Lopez, Director Rasmussen.
Aye.
Director Jones.
Aye.
Director Nelson.
Aye.
Director Richardson.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. All right, that concludes our action items for tonight. That'll move us into school board policy readings. We'll have our first reading policies. First one that we have is policy JHCCF, which is pediculosis or head lice. So this one comes to us as a result of the school district nurses. They've asked the policy be reviewed and corrected to reflect students found with live lice only will be excluded from school attendance. Students found with nits or lice eggs will not be excluded. This procedure correction aligns with the Oregon Department of Health, or excuse me, Oregon Department of Human and Health Services. And then on the policy itself, it's not highlighted, but you see the struck wording, just the two words or nits is the revision on this one. Any comment or question on that one? We'll see this for second reading and adoption in March. If no comment, then if there is anything, please send it so we can make the update ahead of the March meeting and the second reading. The next policy that we have for first reading is policy JHCD/JHCDA, which is medications. And for this one, the Oregon Department of Education and the Oregon Health Authority have co-developed a fentanyl and opioid response toolkit for schools to support educators, administrators, school nurses, students, and families in response to the public health crisis related to rising youth and adult opioid overdoses and death in Oregon. Toolkit provides information about how schools may create an emergency protocol to administer naloxone, also known as Narcan. Also included in the toolkit is information on how to access, administer, and store this medication, resources to support staff training, prevention education, board policy language revisions, and other essential resources to develop and implement these life-saving procedures. So on this one, all of the blue font wording is the additional language to add the Narcan component. Dr. Richardson?
Several technical comments. The Narcan components are good, but this is an older policy that could use some updates and revisions specifically as it relates to type 1 insulin dependent diabetes. I'm wondering if I could visit with maybe Cindy or the superintendent and offer some technical suggestions that could come back to the board for reading.
Yeah, I think that would be good. Any other comments or questions?
I had one other comment on item, well, the footnote 2, be on the second page of this policy. That's been struck out, and that refers to a footnote. Should you not also eliminate that footnote? You see where I'm talking about?
I do. Seeing if it's referenced.
I don't see it
anywhere on that page.
Yeah.
So which it's struck there where the footnote 2 is referenced. So if there is no other footnote 2,
yeah,
then the question is, does the footnote need to be on this page? Because then it goes to 3, which that portion is not struck in that following paragraph. Let us confirm, John. That's a good.
Sorry, it should, because it refers to defining prescriber, and prescriber is in blue above that. So the footnote annotation should be students prescriber 2.
So we just probably need to move the footnote.
Oh, okay. I looked for something else that would be assigned to it. I didn't see it. Okay.
It needs to be moved to the word prescriber in the new language.
I don't know. You might want to do something different with the footnote though, because that's gone, right? So
no, John. So Director Richardson noted that if you look just ahead of the language that is struck, there is the word prescriber there. So that footnote would be applicable to defining the word prescriber.
Okay, and so it just should.
Yeah, so the footnote should be added to that.
Yeah, I get it.
Sentence there. Okay. Any other comments or questions? We'll make those edits for the second reading next meeting. All right, that concludes our first readings. Next, we'll go to second readings, and we have policy IKF, which is graduation requirements. And so this one, there's been additional changes to graduation requirements in Oregon as a result of Senate Bill 1522. The bill provided a new definition for educational program in this state and modified what credits a district shall accept from other educational programs in the state to satisfy credit requirements for a student to graduate. An additional change modified the definition of world language in graduation requirements to include sign language, heritage language, and languages other than a student's primary language. Graduation requirement policies required if the district has graduation requirements in addition to the minimum requirements outlined in law, such as if the district requires more than 24 credit requirements for a high school diploma, has an honors diploma, or has other non-credit requirements. So no edits since our first one. So other than we had said to keep the bracketed word of civics within the description throughout the document. So any comments or questions on graduation requirement policy?
I have one. So there's an besides modified and extended diplomas, there's also something called alternative certificate, which I have never noticed before. I'm sure it's been there. So I looked it up online, and it basically, that was added, I think, in the 2008 and 9 school year. And I don't exactly know, what does that give a student who wants that? And so I looked up also, it says these modified, extended, or alternative certificate credits were an effort during the 2000-2009 school year. And on an alternative certificate, it says to be eligible for an alternative certificate, a student must have met the criteria requirements as specified in district school board policies. So I'm not aware, but do we have a policy which covers that? Because that's the difference for that, that the school board has a policy which speaks to alternative certificates.
Page 5-7. Yep, the alternative certificate section, second to last.
That's what it was on the ODE site. That's what it says.
Did it give a reference to the policy that would be
No, because
related to it?
It has to be specified in each particular district school board policy. It's just basically saying you have to have a policy that covers that.
And it was policy, not AR?
Well, it could be,
Okay.
I would think.
All right, we'll have Dr. Bernal check and see what, if anything, we need to make sure we have the proper policy in place for the alternative certificates. Any other comments, questions? If not, then I will entertain a motion.
I will go ahead and make a motion to approve the changes to policy IKF graduation requirements as presented.
All right, do I have a second? All right, so we've got a motion by Director Rasmussen to approve policy IKF graduation requirements as presented, seconded by Director Lopez. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, then we'll move to a vote. Director Lopez.
Aye.
Director Rasmussen,
Aye.
Director Jones.
Aye.
Director Nelson,
Aye.
Director Richardson,
Aye.
and Chair votes aye as well. Our next second reading is policy JGAB, the use of restraint and seclusion. So there is a revision on this one. So if you guys recall, during our last meeting, when we reviewed the policy for first reading, we made a suggested revision on page 2. So in that paragraph, prior to the word definitions, we're adding volunteer in the example list. So it'll read teacher, administrator, volunteer. And then that addition is in red font to highlight it outside of the blue font changes. So the updates on this policy are the ones recommended to identify prohibitions related to both restraint and seclusion. And this is required language based on, I think, ORS. I didn't write them down, so I apologize. Any question or comment on JGAB?
I have a question. So if you add a volunteer to this mix of people, how much liability does this person have for an inappropriate restraint? In other words, do we need some sort of volunteer training for this point if we're adding that to this policy? I mean, if I was a volunteer and our policy makes it valid for that volunteer, any volunteer, to in a an emergency situation to act, what's that person's liability, and how much training are we giving a volunteer in this area?
I would say that if we are going to have a volunteer that we know may be in a situation where a restraint or exclusion needs to happen, we would make sure that they were appropriately trained.
Question. Any other questions or comments? If not, then I will entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to approve policy JGAB, use of restraint and seclusion as amended.
All right, do I have a second? All right, so I got a motion by Director Rasmussen to approve policy JGAB, the use of restraint and seclusion, seconded by Director Jones. Any further discussion or comment? Seeing none, then we'll move to a vote. Director Lopez, Director Rasmussen.
Aye.
Director Jones. Aye. Director Nelson.
Aye.
Director Richardson.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Right. And then we have a couple of administrative regulations in our packet. We have policy JHCD/JHCDA-AR, which is medication. So this corresponds with the one that we have first reading. So this is the AR to that with the Narcan component. And then we also have policy BCBA-AR, which is student representatives to the board. And it is accompanied by policy BCBA-AR, which is the application for student representatives to the board. And I didn't know, Dr. Richardson, if you had any words you wanted to say on those. I know that this is kind of an exciting element for the district to be able to have an actual student that will sit in our meetings and participate in full. So I don't know if you have any additional words for that.
Just appreciation to those who've helped to compose this, and feedback we've got from stakeholders, and sitting with administrators to try and craft this from other similar programs within the state. So I welcome any feedback that you may have, but this has been a collaborative document. So thank you.
Dr. Richardson. All right, that concludes our administrative regulations. Next on the agenda, we will shift into comments from the audience or our public comment section? And we do have folks signed up. Did everyone sign up that's here that's wanted to speak? Just kind of last call for anyone. Not seeing hands. Okay. So with that, so the North Wasco County School District Board of Directors welcomes public comment on non-agenda items. Items are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. So I'll just kind of give you the high sign as time is winding down. We as a board will not take any action or respond to public comment at tonight's meeting. But following the meeting, myself, the chair, the vice chair, and the superintendent will together determine the appropriate level of response. The board at its discretion may require that a proposal, inquiry, or request be submitted in writing and reserve the right to refer the matter to the administration for action or for study and to report at a subsequent meeting. And that's per policy BDDH-AR, public participation in board meetings. If the board requires a proposal, inquiry, or request to be submitted in writing, it should be sent by email with any reference materials to Cindy Miller at millerc@nwasco.k12.or.us. And as a reminder, speakers may offer objective criticism of district operations or programs, but the board will not hear complaints concerning specific district personnel. Speakers are also invited to submit questions in writing via email to Cindy Miller. That email again is millerc@nwasco.k12.or.us, and that'll be reviewed by myself, the chair, and also the superintendent. So with that, timer. All right. First tonight, we have Ms. Katie Kelly.
Good evening, members of our school board and district staff. Thank you for allowing me to be here. My name is Katie Kelly. I'm speaking tonight about my children's experiences at Dry Hollow. My oldest child had really great experiences at Dry Hollow Elementary starting in 2016. He wasn't exposed to the violence and threats from classmates that my youngest child has experienced. The differences in my children's experiences is due to a shift in the way behaviors are addressed, along with the lack of accountability and responsibility for those behaviors. It's a shift of leadership. The lack of transparency is concerning, as is the lack of support for your boots on the ground staff at Dry Hollow Elementary. Last year, I had a child in the first grade. My child, along with his classmates, were exposed to violent behavior and threats of harm throughout the course of the school year. Some examples of the behavior include throwing chairs in the classroom, eloping from the classroom after outbursts in the middle of class, throwing scissors at a classmate so hard that the scissors broke, repeatedly punching and slapping classmates in the regular classroom during recess and in music class. And one child threatened another classmate and said, "I'm going to kill you." At no time during the school year did building or district leadership communicate to parents the repetitive violent situations that my child and his classmates were being exposed to. That is lack of transparency. My child's classroom was not the only classroom seeing these types of behaviors at Dry Hollow. I was told many times last year that additional supports were being put in place for these students. When is the line in the sand drawn with clear expectations and safe boundaries? When is the safety of the rest of the classmates going to be made a priority? Classroom clearing is not the way to ensure students are safe and supported in an educational environment. Classroom clearing is disruptive and reactionary. We need proactive, common sense solutions. Staff have been held to the fire with no support. I communicated concerns. I haven't seen any meaningful changes to mitigate the student behavior or support for our staff. The violent and threatening behaviors are getting worse this school year. Students and staff are being physically and verbally assaulted. We need a culture within our district from the top down that supports our staff and prioritizes the safety and educational needs of every student. Thank you. The district needs transparency and leaders who will show up willing to have difficult conversations with parents and who are willing to make difficult decisions while considering the well-being of all students. In loco parentis means that when my child leaves my physical custody and protection in the morning and goes to school, the school assumes physical custody of my child and is responsible for his well-being. This means the school has a legal duty to protect my child. The behaviors at school are a safety concern. There is a loss of trust between the school district and the families it serves. This year, my child is seeing negative and violent behavior rewarded in a sense. He says, if you go to room 8 to take a break, you get a snack and you get to play. I don't believe the way the staff have been instructed to implement restorative practices is the right approach, and it is certainly not helping any of our students to become resilient humans who respect boundaries or authority. It is not teaching our students how to become productive and good citizens. I encourage the school board and district leadership to observe and become more curious about what is happening in our elementary schools. I encourage you to be solution focused. I encourage you to properly support your staff so that they can properly support our students. I encourage you to implement sooner rather than later site councils at each school. I encourage parents to ask about the opportunity to join your school's site councils. I understand site councils give parents the opportunity to gain insight into, as well as help shape the plan for facility, curriculum, special programs, and staff needs. I hope to see site councils established at our schools much before the implementation deadline. This can help to create transparency and create parent buy-in, and that's what our staff and students need. Lastly, I encourage parents to reach out to building and district leadership with concerns and consider speaking at the next school board meeting. Thank you for allowing me the time to share.
Ms. Kelly. Next we have Ms. Ashley Dodson.
And thank you for allowing me to speak as well. My name is Ashley Dodson, and I want to start off by telling you about my children. My husband and I have 2 children at Dry Hill Elementary School as well. Hallie's in 2nd grade and Austin's in kindergarten. Their experiences have been incredibly different, and I'm here to advocate for the kindergarten class and teachers. So I recently participated in the parent workshop on conflict resolution that District 21 provided to families. Only 7 parents in the whole entire district attended that workshop. During the presentation, education consultants Joanne Friedberg and Pat Ciccone stated that restorative practices does not mean no boundaries, no expectations, and no accountability. However, when I hear of regular classroom clearings, repeated threats to teachers and peers, and positive reinforcement for negative behaviors, I have concerns that there are no boundaries, there are no expectations for our children, and there is no accountability. I'm also concerned about the lack of transparency from administration, given my kindergartner is the one informing me of these things on a daily basis. The consultants gave their phone numbers as a resource, and I called them. I expressed to them that my happy and vibrant, carefree child's demeanor has completely changed. The once eager child no longer wants to go to school
she doesn't want to talk about her day when she comes home. She's more emotional about situations that previously would not have affected her. As a family, we have changed our schedules to support her in any way that we can. Her concerns about violence and classroom safety are valid. The teachers are doing their absolute best to support her, and I appreciate and respect the teachers showing up every day, but the system is failing our children and our teachers. Regularly, classrooms are being disrupted by classroom clearing, causing lesson plans to be abandoned for nature walks, which is not what I signed my child up for, unless it's in the plan. To ensure my child is safe, she's removed from the classroom, while the other child remains and destroys it. Instead of curriculum, my child is being taught that boundaries don't exist, and she is being subjected to psychological, social, and emotional trauma daily, the exact trauma that this framework is meant to help. This is causing burnout, low morale for the teaching staff, who again do their best to support, but get little from their administration. Joanne Friedberg also said to me, the last thing that children of trauma need is to have education crammed down their throats. And that is a direct quote, which makes me question if this is the appropriate environment for children who clearly need specialized education and specialized behavioral health learning, both of which is not on site at Dry Hollow. When I ended my phone call with the consultants that the district hired to give this in-service to their teachers just on February 17th, 5 months after school has been in, she said to me, try to be patient. Your child sounds like they're going to be just fine. And I know this is going to be true, but it's not because of this framework. And it is going to be because of the choices that her dad and I make on her placement next year. Restorative practices and PBIS, when implemented correctly, can be a very beneficial adjunct to accountability, but it is too advanced for children in kindergarten who lack the cognitive abilities to participate in restorative circles. It is disruptive to their teachers who are trying to teach the rest of the class. And to be successful in restorative practice framework, there must be enough staff. When I met with the principal, originally our plan was scheduled to be on a Friday, and she notified me she was 13 staff short and could not meet with me that day. There are not enough resources to support this framework effectively, and we cannot expect our teachers to do the work of social workers and psychologists. If this is the goal, then we need to employ those resources as a district. Our district must listen to the concerns of their staff and work with them. They can't just be heard. What are we going to do about this as a district to support our kindergartners? In healthcare, we use a method called check and adjust. We check if things are going well, we adjust when they are not. And that's my expectation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dodson. Next, we have Marissa Isaac.
My name is Marissa, and I am the mother of a third grader and a kindergartner at Dry Hollow. I want to bring up the reality our students are facing and why more and more students are leaving Dry Hollow. Within the first 3 weeks of school, my kindergartner had been punched in the stomach, slapped, and choked. He had peers using cuss words in class, and the same 4 students that were hitting and cussing were also being disruptive and not staying on task, taking away from his learning time. As a concerned parent, I met with the teacher and Ms. Rossmiller and was met with some justifications. It's only week 3, the students are getting adjusted. We won't remove a child from the classroom and shame them in front of their peers. And I thought about that, and it was early in the school year, and I had hope that, things would settle. But the behaviors and problems continued, and by month 4, my student dreaded going to school. It affected our time at home for 2 hours in the evening. Mom, I don't want to go. Don't make me go, please. I could see his demeanor changing. He described feelings of anxiety and stress because in his mind, he wondered who's going to hit me tomorrow and what disorder would be tolerated. My son has asked me, why don't they care about me, referring to the adults at the school? Why don't they protect me? He felt helpless. The district wants to have an equitable learning environment, but like many others, what about my child's equitable learning environment? Every mission, value, and vision the district has is currently not being met. The ideas of them are great, but it's a miss. My son's last day at Dry Hollow involved him having another student pat over his genital region, and the student wouldn't stop when he asked him to. The student then proceeded to hit him in the head a few times with the stuffed animal. When I asked the teacher what they were doing that prevented them from seeing this happen, the response was, I have 2 to 3 students in that class that take all of my attention. I need an assistant just for them. So the teacher's attention was on 2 students and the rest of the class is neglected. And safety is missed because they can't see it. There's no way that they can do both. I withdrew my student from Dry Hollow and validated his feelings that he was being failed, that even if he felt the school didn't see what he was going through, I did as his mother and I would protect him. So my husband and I made the best decision that we could, and that was to homeschool him. The next thing I want to bring attention to is the teachers. I have so much respect and empathy for what those incredible teachers are having to deal with. The teachers are not adequately being supported by administration. There are times when they bring things up, concerns, only to be dismissed. An example a teacher gave me without going into detail was, we should notify the parents this incident happened. They will have questions or will hear about it from their kids. The response was, no, we're dealing with it. When there is no transparency, it creates a relationship of distrust, poor informed decision-making, gossip, negative feelings, and skewed reality, because we fill in the gaps. Thank you. When there's a lack of transparency towards staff, it leads to poor buy-in with them. When it comes to policy and procedure changes, it ultimately affects its success. The school is not being transparent with us parents, and it is not acceptable. It is felt that big issues are being swept under the rug as a way of dealing with it. The teachers also want to be transparent with us, but they also feel if they discuss actual problems occurring in the classroom or speak up, they will be retaliated against the district. These are from the teachers that want to be involved and be transparent. They don't feel supported. Not only are kids being physically and emotionally assaulted, so are the teachers. The teachers are being bit, hit, jumped on, having objects thrown at them. Are you aware that teachers have been sent to the emergency department because of injuries from their students? At what point does the district acknowledge that restorative practices was not properly rolled out? There currently is not an adequate number of staff to put this in place, and safety needs to be the top priority. My understanding is that the teachers just had their first in-service on restorative practices. We're 5 months into school. What assessment tools are currently in place to evaluate its effectiveness? What about the trauma that is occurring at school? Who is accountable for that? There is unnecessary chaos going on in the school that's taken away valuable learning time, and if there are no major changes, more students and teachers will leave Dry Hollow. I appreciate your time tonight, and I look forward to a resolution on the current issues students and teachers are faced with.
Thank you, Ms. Isaac. Next, we'll hear from Natasha Scove.
First, I'd like to thank the school board for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I know your time is valuable, as is mine. My name is Natasha Scove, and I have a daughter in kindergarten at Dry Hollow School. She's my first school-age child, and I have 2 more younger than her that will enter school in the next few years. I've always supported public school and view public education as a fundamental right for our children and an integral part in helping create a foundation for well-adjusted beings who will be contributing members of our society. I do not view schools as a place for children to be raised, but as a place where they can learn, socialize, explore, push boundaries, get out of their comfort zone, and also feel safe. I don't say this lightly. These needs are not being met currently in my daughter's classroom, despite the best efforts of her incredible teachers. Mrs. Elliott, who left the classroom in January to pursue an opportunity with the ESD, Mrs. Wilson, my daughter's current teacher, who is Mrs. Elliott's assistant, and now Mrs. Shearer, who is the current assistant, were and are a wealth of love, support, and leadership for my daughter, and are truly the main reason she's still at Dry Hollow. They have proved to me over and over again that her education, mental health, and physical safety are of the utmost importance to them. From what I've witnessed, the restorative practices does not allow the administration to provide students and teachers the support they need. My daughter's class has multiple students who not only disrupt class, but are physically violent and threatening to both students and staff, including regular threats of death. These are behaviors my child witnesses on a daily basis, and daily is not an exaggeration. I volunteered in the classroom 8 times since the middle of December, so my accounts here are firsthand knowledge and not rumor, which I hope validates the seriousness that I am displaying in bringing these concerns to you. I began volunteering in the classroom because of changes in my own daughter's behavior. I wanted to see for myself if the tattling that she was telling me at home was true, and unfortunately it was. She began changing and not sharing those items with me any longer, and I felt like I needed to go into the classroom and see it for myself and see what I could do to help. There is, of course, normal disruptive behavior happening, but the frequency of these incidences are beginning to increase, and there's no discipline or repercussions for these students. So it is now becoming a learned and rewarded behavior. As a parent, I should have known that these things were happening without having my student tell them to me. I respect the privacy laws that are in place to protect children, including my own, but communication about classroom clearing, death threats, violence, and destruction should be communicated to parents. There are manners to communicate this safely and legally, and they aren't being utilized. Concerns from parents, students, and teachers are being dismissed, and the children and teachers are the ones paying the price for it. The entire school day revolves around just a few students. Dry Hollow lacks the resources to help these children by not having a site council, a special education program, and soon they will also be without a school counselor. There are always going to be disruptors, bullies, and difficult students that cause occasional problems, but the resounding sentiment from students, staff, teachers, and parents is that what is going on right now is not normal. Parents have to do what's best for their children, but we also expect the district to do what's best for them while they're in their care, and that's not happening. I believe in this school system, and I'd like to see positive change made because I do have to do what's best for my child. And having her be at Dry Hollow where the restorative practices program is in place is not what's best for my child. The system is failing and the teachers and the system is failing the teachers and the students. And if it remains implemented how it is currently, I will have to remove my child from school, something I do not want to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scope. Next, we'll hear from Ms. Karen Wilson.
Good evening. My name is Karen Wilson, and I serve as a kindergarten teacher at Dry Hollow Elementary School. I have been in this role since January 3rd of this year. Prior to that, I worked as a kindergarten assistant for the last 3.5 years at Dry Hollow. I hope to offer the board some insights as to what is happening in our elementary schools, particularly in kindergarten where I work. My goal is to help you be better informed about problem behaviors which are disrupting learning for all of our youngest students and the district's response to the same, resulting in significant lost learning and undue mental and emotional distress for students, teachers, and support staff. In the 7 weeks I've been teaching kindergarten, I've had to clear my room on multiple occasions, including twice in the last 2 days, due to the conduct of 2 students. Behaviors which resulted in me having to clear my room include damage to district and personal property, upending, dumping supplies and student materials, or trashing the room, and regular, persistent, open defiance and refusal to follow directions, including the direction to the student demonstrating the problem behavior to leave the room with a staff member. Problem behaviors I have seen in recent weeks include a student repeatedly telling me, my assistant, and their classmates that they hate them and are going to kill them, repeatedly biting and slapping me and my assistant and throwing Play-Doh in the face of the kindergarten assistant. More concerning than the behaviors is the response to the same. The rollout and implementation of the restorative practice policy of the district that the district has embraced and begun to implement this late in the school year has been inconsistent, resulting in much confusion. Responses to problem behaviors focus on returning the student to the regular classroom as quickly and safely as possible without adequate staff support to ensure that behavior is not repeated and the other students are kept safe. Natural and logical consequences and discipline designed to deter negative, undesirable student conduct and to teach and encourage pro-social behavior through accountability have been discouraged and are being abandoned. Discipline is now a dirty word. At our restorative practice training just last Friday, we were told by the trainers that student handbooks would need to go. I am concerned that in light of problem behaviors, many students, both disabled students whose behavior is deemed a manifestation of their disability, and those who are not disabled, are not receiving a free, appropriate public education. Thank you. Here is just one example, and I have many more if you care to inquire of me. Today, a student in my class became violent and started lashing out physically and verbally at a staff member before beginning to wreck the classroom. This resulted in a room clear for student safety and to ensure the other students did not witness the out-of-control student's conduct. Me, my kindergarten assistant, and my other students were out of the room for about 25 minutes before staff could encourage the student who remained in the classroom to leave the room through a piggyback ride to the sealer room, and another staff member was left behind to clean up his mess. Within 25 minutes of returning to the room with my students, the student whose behavior necessitated the room clear was returned to my classroom where they apologized to me and to the kindergarten assistant. I was informed by the administration that they had decided to allow the student to remain at school because no one was injured and the student had apologized. I beg to defer that no one was injured. No one may have been physically injured, but the rest of my students, myself and my support staff person, were all psychologically, emotionally, mentally, and educationally injured. I was not at school the remainder of that day, having taken a mental health half day after that experience. But I learned that the same student was escalated again and began wrecking the room once more today. Many staff with whom I speak have similar experiences and concerns, but are afraid to speak out for fear of being disciplined or terminated by this administration, losing their careers and livelihood. I am speaking tonight because I want those in a position to make policy, you, the school board, to have the facts you need to make informed and reasonable decisions for the good of our students, their families, and our employees. I am speaking as a concerned citizen as well as a school district employee, and I am happy to visit and dialogue with any board members who would like more information about what I see happening daily at Dry Hollow Elementary School. I've never met Miss Isaac, who spoke tonight, but it was almost as if we were preparing our comments side by side. Everything she said, I could agree with. And I would just ask you to review her comments because I would rubber stamp those. Thank you for your time tonight, and I appreciate your attention to this matter.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Our final speaker for tonight is going to be Ms. Stevie Elledge.
Hi, thank you for your time tonight. I come from Colonel Wright. I have two children at Colonel Wright and one at the middle school, and I'm here to represent my daughter's kindergarten class. All of the behaviors that you're hearing about tonight have also gone on in my daughter's class. She's been punched, bit, hit, spit on, told she was stupid. It is not isolated to Dry Hollow. It is also going on at Colonel Wright. Things have to change. Our children have to feel safe at school. You hear tonight about implementation of new processes that have already been in place this entire year. It has to be obvious that we shouldn't be going under, sorry, I didn't come as well prepared as the other people. It has to be obvious that we're implementing processes that the staff isn't properly trained on. My daughter's teacher has been out on maternity leave almost this entire year. You accepted the resignation of her teaching assistant today. So at this moment in time, there's no one in her class to advocate for the students who need special help. She hasn't even really had a trained teacher in her class. She's had substitutes, small bits of temporary substitutes this entire year, most of which who are not at all qualified to handle the students that are in that classroom. As a district, we're massively failing our young generation of students. My older child in middle school has had a few issues this year, and they were all handled very well, very appropriately, very happy with the way the situations were handled. But in the kindergarten and even in my child's third grade class, just sad.
All right, thank you, Ms. Elledge, and that concludes our public comment for tonight. As I mentioned at the beginning of the comment, we'll sit down with Superintendent Bernal and figure out how to be able to respond and address kind of what you brought forward tonight. So I thank you all for coming out tonight, spending your evening with us and making your comment. I do appreciate that. As a parent myself of similar age group, I can totally relate. So with that said, that wraps up our meeting for this evening. So I will officially adjourn this meeting.